We are
Gotta Google
okay. Time is now 6:30. Members present. Carrie, Kim, Brandon, Dave, Don, and Chair Charles Myers absent. Guthrie. We have a quorum. The Works Committee meeting is now called to order. First item on the agenda are minutes from 8/12. Are there any corrections that members would like to offer? Hearing none, I accept the minutes as they have been submitted to this committee. Item number 2, Park Street and Elmwood Ave intersection pedestrian and bicyclist accommodations 24-116 from PBTC 8824. All right, Sean, and then Sean, after you walk us through, Carrie, if you mind talking us through the discussion after Sean goes, that would be from Ped Bike and Transit. If you have that would be great.
Great, because my understanding is a little bit secondhand, but Mark Opitz gave me a briefing, and Strand's been working for us to develop some concepts. Number one, to see what can be done, what are the relative merits or disadvantages of each of them. They gave us a rough cost estimate based on just the concepts for discussion purposes. For things we might do with the overall focus of maybe not as much traffic calming as just pedestrian and bicyclist enhancements, just to try to get across that intersection a little bit easier. So they came up with 3 concepts, one of which had some sub options. Ended up at Ped Bike Transit, as I understand it, with an overall leaning toward the raised intersection of the options. That was option 3, I believe, but not a motion per se. So I wanted to come here and just for additional consideration. Oh, sure. Thank you. For those at home who may have missed it, the suggestion was just that I get to the drawings part of this all. Thank you, sir. Sure. I'll skip over some of this. So I don't know if you can read this, but one of the options was for a traffic circle out in the middle of the intersection, and that could talked about raised crosswalks at just 2 of the approaches or at all of the approaches. And then the third alternative was an entire raised crosswalk, which has some relocation of storm sewer you can see in red rectangles. And so, I think there was concern with a traffic circle, first off, that it's not always intuitive that large wheelbase vehicles need to come to the inside of the circle. They have an opportunity to navigate 3/4 of a turn around a circle sometimes. And so for buses and trucks, you might expect them to cut short. That has some inherent risk of somebody that may be pulled too far forward from a stop bar, kind of bottlenecking things. It could also bottleneck things if someone southbound were a bit hung up or couldn't get through conveniently toward University Avenue. So I think there was some concern with the traffic circle. I think the raised crosswalks may have been favorable overall, but then the raised intersection was even more favorable, as I understand it. You can fill us in on specifics maybe here, Carrie, then.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was not at the meeting
You're not
on August 8th.
There we are.
So yeah, I know is like just in terms of like the meeting notes and what you explained, Sean.
Okay.
I do know that in previous discussions just about the whole Elmwood corridor, that I think there's just been various things proposed, especially I know we're only talking about right tonight about the Park Street intersection, but I know in the past there's been like, basically the goal of like calming traffic, also pedestrian safety and bicycle safety on that road. I know the intersections like Middleton Street, Bristol Street were talked about as well. And I think all of these options have been kind of circulating through the committee. And yeah, from previous discussions, it didn't really reach a consensus, but I think that's the desire, is to definitely have traffic calming, pedestrian safety.
And so are you saying, am I hearing that Ped Bike Transit didn't reach a consensus? I was under the impression they had.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about like previous discussions on the entire Elmwood corridor road.
Okay, sorry. Yes, that's correct.
Yes, from 8-8, you're right that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. And so we have a budget request in for the rest of the Elmwood Avenue corridor at large. It's in several aldermanic districts. There were many ideas in different areas, but no consensus. So that got separated, much the same way that this kind of got separated from the Elmwood Avenue resurfacing project. Because at the time it was raised, it was hoped like it would just sort of get done. And we just didn't have the time or the bandwidth to look into options and get stakeholders involved and make sure that what we were doing was what was hoped for. So that's what this is all about.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so one of the main reasons I brought it here was just for some second set of eyes, thoughts, whether there's consensus or different ideas before we move on with final design of any one of these options. Or a different option. I don't want to close the door.
We've got a signal crossing one block to the south there, correct?
To the south at Hubbard,
Yeah.
we put in some RRFBs.
Yeah.
The PED activated, flashers. Yep.
And I know that was, at one point there was discussion of putting some of those here, but because there was one a block away, we determined not to. I remember right.
Yeah.
My memory recalls.
That was part of it. There was some concern that if there was a real frequency of that being activated, that we might at peak times back into University Avenue. This is effectively of the same cloth though, right? If people are crossing the street, we need vehicles to yield, period. The more people self-select Hubbard Avenue, fine. But if they're going on Elmwood Avenue anyway, we definitely do want that to be, I almost never say safe because that connotes that there's some sort of absolute safety, but at least reasonably safe, right? There are always human factors that we can't build with concrete.
Sure. So what was the cost comparison between this and the one before?
Let me just scroll down.
Versus one? 22 versus 10.
Right, so option one looks like it was just grossly cost out at 135, 122, maybe 125 for option two, and it was 240 for option three. So it was quite a bit more expensive for the extra concrete in there.
Mm-hmm.
Traffic circle comes with a few more disadvantages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. The traffic circle would be not a good application here.
Yeah, I think there was some consensus, even at the staff level, a traffic circle probably wouldn't work
Yeah.
very well.
No, I think
here.
the traffic council alone would really cause that to be problematic.
So it sort of came down to, do you do 2 raised crosswalks, 4 raised crosswalks? Boy, at the time you're doing 4, you might as well just lift the intersection.
Mhm.
But this one only shows 2, right?
This one just shows 2, the
Because-
northbound, southbound.
Probably because the Elmwood is a stop sign.
These are stop controlled, exactly, yeah.
It's quite a bit more money to raise the whole intersection too.
Yeah, it was about double.
Because you could do 2 intersections. You're just raising the crosswalks for the same price. Not quite, I guess, but
It's something to consider.
depending on where the storm sewer is, because that's gonna be in addition to the concrete. If we have to relocate them, if we have to relocate it at both intersections that we do.
Is audio coming through okay for folks? That is, okay.
I'm okay with number 2 for 122. Seems like a, you know, the least. At least doesn't cost as much, but it does certainly make an effort to slow some traffic down and create a scenic area. How do those raised crosswalks survive and work in winter climates on a busy road like this?
We're about to find out. We have some at Red Tail Ridge, brand new. Other than that, we just have speed humps, but not raised crosswalks.
Those
Aren't on Park Street.
Are they?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I'm just wondering, I mean. But the plows, you know, have to go up and down all the same streets.
Sure.
Like Rolling Hill, not Rolling Hill, Valley Ridge, it's got those big. Long, wide monster concrete ones.
They should, I think, plow reasonably similar to us. It's the same approach.
You cut the concrete, you cut the pavement out and then pour in the raised concrete walk area, crossing area, correct?
Yeah, so these black lines are the saw cuts effectively, right? So this would all be concrete.
Yeah,
Down here, and this would be the ramp up, and this would be.
the ramp down, yeah, that's, okay, so it's kind of the construction or the mechanical side of it is similar to that.
Are they then labeled like a speed bump?
I'm sorry.
Are they labeled like a speed bump so that people driving know that, hey, I'm gonna hit a bump?
I don't remember if we put specific signs in Red Tail Ridge or not. I'll have to go check.
Well, yeah.
These, I think we would give some sort of advance warning because they're, you know, not controlled in any other way.
Yeah.
Raised crosswalk ahead.
I mean, having two like that so close together. I mean, you gotta slow down.
Yeah, at least two.
Right. I mean, it's like, whoa.
Or you will the second time. Yeah. Carrie, you had your hand up?
Oh, I was just wishing that wouldn't have missed that meeting. I was trying to find the minutes. I don't think they're published yet. I just wanted to better understand the benefits of a raised intersection versus the raised crosswalks. I kind of agree for like the cost. It seems like it might meet the same purpose. So I wish I would better understand like what the committee was thinking. I don't know if Mark shared any more information, Sean, and like why the elevated intersection alternative was the preference.
You can look at these grids here for the comparatives on them. But it's pretty similar from a comparative pros and cons. It's just the elevated effectively says, you know, it's going to have higher costs because it's just more concrete. I guess the way it says it is the raised crosswalks does not require full reconstruction of the intersection. So we wouldn't have to adjust all the castings that are out in the intersection and replace the blacktop with concrete. It might be worth looking into a hybrid wherein we do the approaches with concrete, but then the flat central area just gets paved with blacktop. It cost a little bit less upfront. It might not last as long though. That's sort of a higher impact area then.
The raised table intersection might be marginally better in terms of ADA accessibility as well, because you're not navigating.
Oh,
You're not
What difference?
navigating down into the street and then up again on the ramp. But you're staying at one level, so if you're a wheelchair user,
Are we?
on the raised table, yeah.
It would have flatter, if not non-existent ramps, yeah, because the
Yeah.
whole intersection just goes up basically to the elevation of the
On a
sidewalk
curve.
outside the street. And one of the things is, if you're thinking of a comparative, oops. Rolling kind of quickly, so for those with vertigo, if you had 4 of these where on a bicycle, you'd be kind of going up and down and up and down. Or worse yet, around a corner, you'd be going up, then down, then back up pretty quickly while cornering. It might be a little bit convoluted for a bike or motorcycle, something with a little bit less friction than 4 tires.
Motorcycle can handle it.
It always depends on the speed though, doesn't it?
Motorcyclists gonna ride that fast, they're just plain reckless.
Yeah, we should probably consider the bike aspect here since Elmwood is the designated bicycle corridor.
I wouldn't worry about motorcycle.
And yet I would.
Well, I'm thinking just from, particularly from a bicycle standpoint, having to go up those raised crosswalks twice and even driving, right? That's not gonna, yes, it's gonna slow things, but I understand that option number 3 is a little more expensive, but I think it's also probably longer lasting, more effective and easier for people to navigate.
Yeah, that is a really good point. That makes sense.
Is our goal to make it more navigable? We want to slow people down
Safely.
safely. I know, but I mean, yeah,
And Wisconsin has winter, so bicyclists are only gonna be out half the year.
no, they're around all year.
Yeah.
This is Madison, Central. Madison.
Yeah. Well, I am pretty cautious too about these ladder crosswalks, because that paint can get a little slick when it's wet.
Yeah.
Or slushy or icy,
Mhm.
so corners in and of themselves are sometimes a hassle for them.
I imagine it's probably a little bit easier to plow the raised table.
I don't know, one of the downsides can be when there's no curb to trace a plow blade along, it can be a little bit difficult even just to know where that curve is.
Oh, so the snow's actually gonna get potentially just either not moved as far as it needs to get moved or moved further than it needs to get moved, kind of creating some interesting snow removal logistics that get pretty manual around that intersection.
Potentially. Yeah,
Now, that would be up to the homeowners who live there and the businesses. They obviously would have to clear out the sidewalk all the way to the street.
yeah, and it isn't even that as much, because pretty much every intersection, anyone who's lived on a corner lot knows you really get blessed at these corners.
Yeah,
When it's all at the same elevation, there's sort of nothing to feel in terms of, did we go far enough? Did we go too far? So they might be plowing out here or over here. And it
that's what I
might
mean,
not be till
when the
later.
plow rounds the corner, they're guiding themselves on the curb, and then the curb ends, so the driver takes the turn and then realigns himself with the curb again. So there's some, I don't know.
It can be a little by feel and a little by look. but
Yeah.
When it's all at the same elevation and covered, it's probably harder.
The vegetation would all go away, I would imagine.
We're not that far along yet, but that probably would be prudent. It would be.
You wouldn't have those
a
little,
little weird to have grass here.
Yeah,
yeah,
make
like
it all concrete.
so if it was all concrete. And then you don't have to worry about hitting anything or plowing into anything or whatever the case
It's
is.
not as.
Yeah, yeah.
Carrie, you have your hand raised.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in the rep or in the memo, it said that Monroe Street and Harrison Street in Madison have this raised crosswalk. So I just pulled it up on a map. So I don't know, Sean, if that would be helpful, but it doesn't have like the vegetation, just like what you're talking about, like a satellite image. And I've definitely have driven on Monroe Street, and I don't remember that it was like, I don't know, I don't remember that this was like a huge inconvenience, right? So I'm thinking that the raised intersection might be a good way to go, especially if like that's the other committee's recommendation. But it's good that we have an example, I guess, what I'm trying to say here, locally.
This goes ahead, it's 2026.
I put money in for the raised crosswalk in the 25 budget for consideration.
Okay. Just the cross, not the raised intersection.
Nope, the raised
Oh, the
intersection.
raised intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, we requested
It was-
250,000.
Yeah, it was like down near 7, something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't rated top of the list.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you need from us tonight, Sean? Just
Well,
concurrence, yeah,
concurrence or not,
yeah,
but I'm trying to figure out before we engage anybody to move into final design, is that what we want? Because if it's not, we need more discussion first, because
Mhm.
otherwise we're just planning the wrong
And
thing.
Bike Pet's gotta come back with their final recommendation, because they have not yet.
I got the impression from Mark Opitz, they, by consensus, were satisfied with option 3. I didn't get the sense that they wanted to take it back up, but if Public Works Committee, I think, has a different impression, I suspect they would be happy to take it back up.
Yeah,
So do we want to refer it back to Ped Bike and Transit, choose between options 2 and 3, tell us which one you want?
And I feel like they kind of already did that, and they only meet once a month, and
Yeah,
if they're sending it to us to ask for our consensus, then we should provide them that consensus and guidance to.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I'm bringing
Yes.
it here.
Okay,
As far as I know, they just expressed consensus, but not a referral.
okay,
Gotcha.
Again, like Carrie mentioned, the minutes are not yet available, so I just have a verbal discussion with Mark Opitz, who staffs that committee.
I'm just thinking of cost, so. I'm just more leaning towards,
it's got to rhyme that too.
it's. I don't know, more time I spend on finance committee, the harder it becomes to spend money.
When you know what the constraint is, yeah.
Because it's like, it's like, all the asks are so big, and it's like, okay, I'd rather see an ask come through, where we look at it and go, yeah, okay, as opposed to, whoa, no.
Well, I think we budgeted for this in our request already, and it's still, this amount is still under the amount that we requested from finance with the 30% contingency added on, so. I understand wanting to not spend money.
Yep, we're just spending other people's money. So
I
always about, in my opinion, just finding a reasonable place, I think it's important to be mindful of the money we spend. We want to meet everybody all the way around. We want to give them a safe place to cross. We want to control traffic. We want it to be effective. And we want to always make sure that we have money for other things. With this
that's the
this project, we could do 2 raised crosswalks, one somewhere else in the city, as opposed to 1 raised intersection in 1 spot.
accidents there, Sean?
It's been a while since I tracked crashes here. So I don't know. It doesn't stick in my memory as a hot spot. Can't say. Carrie, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe since Um, I agree with the recommendation to maybe throw it back to pedestrian bicycle transit committee, just in terms of like, would be, or maybe we defer this until the minutes are published so that we better understand like the reasons why the raised intersection was more preferred, just because to get their perspective from like the bicycle, because we kind of talked about like, oh, maybe for bicycling it would be better, or maybe, but I think it might be helpful to get a little bit more information before we make the decision, if we have time. I don't know, Sean, like if we defer this or if we wait, how does that work in terms of design and implementation?
Sure, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know for certain, but the way I'm envisioning this is once we release Strand to pursue final design, ideally, we will have something put together and out for bid December, maybe January. And it's not a very complicated bid package that we have to put together for something like this. Maybe the other unknown, of course, is will there be funding at all? So I think we'd have to decide what we're going to design prior to knowing the answer to that question. And it's a little bit of a horse race when the cost differential is this big on final design, where one's 240,000 and one's 130, 125 maybe. That's pretty significant. So if the council comes back and says, we're not funded 250, but we'll give you 130, let's hope we haven't designed the wrong thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Little bit of a three-legged race here.
that is. And when will finance, when is the timing on that again for the budget approvals?
I think usually it gets recommended from Finance and Personnel Committee to the Common Council, probably in late October. And then the council will need to have a public hearing, usually in early to mid-November, before setting the budget. And so it kind of, by the time the council is setting the budget, we should have a pretty solid understanding of the final design.
So if we went with option 3, we could hire somebody to design it now, and at the end of the day, it may get tabled
Correct. Yep.
or shelved.
And same with option 2. I mean, it's
Yeah,
potential, we could design that and it also wouldn't get funded.
Yeah, which always adds cost to the design services,
Yeah.
regardless of what you think that was done. No, we gotta review it before it gets bid.
And yeah, right. But even if it sits for a year unfunded,
Yeah.
it's not wasted effort. It's
No,
just
no,
in
no,
a
I
file
agree with that.
someplace waiting.
It is also possible that it should just sit for a year because we're planning on doing that study of the Elmwood. We submitted the study for the Elmwood corridor as
Yeah.
well. So, it may be entirely possible that it would be best to consider this in 2026 so that we can have it all be one project.
Maybe. I mean, they could stand alone. I'm
Yeah.
not concerned by that, but
Yeah,
could be.
we might be able to have a little bit of cost savings if we
There's potential.
lumped in the same budget year,
Mhm.
and that would help us maybe get over the cost of the raised table a bit. But there's also the chance that concrete goes up in price
It will.
substantially.
Yeah. It's not a big risk.
Yeah. I said chance, not risk.
It's happening.
Yeah.
I like Carrie's approach of tabling it until the next meeting so we can get the final feedback from Ed and Mike.
Yeah, let's move to defer consideration of this until Pet Bike and Transit sends
Yeah.
us something. In their reasoning a bit more.
Sure. That's my motion to defer.
Or to table.
Defer.
Or table.
Now I'm confused.
Let's do it as defer consideration because tabling, then we have to put it on the agenda to take it off the table.
Oh, okay, never mind. So, all right.
So the motion is to defer.
Different.
Second that motion.
Sean, is it with that deferral, is it possible to ask for the minutes, or I guess like how do we get some more information from them?
Yeah, I'll see once what the minutes say. I think Mark gave me the verbal summary of what he was prepared to write. I just haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
And that's all I could put in our packets for now. And so I don't know if there was an intention of giving more in writing, or, I mean, the other option, of course, would be to view the portion of the meeting where Ped by Transit discussed this prior to reaching consensus. And that would flesh out their thoughts and reasoning more.
Okay.
I still think we should wait for the minutes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And, they may see this discussion and decide that it would be a good idea to give us a very, very clear summary of exactly what their considerations were when they coalesced around option number 3.
Sure. I would imagine Mark could do that. Opus.
Yeah.
Well, and ideally, minutes are really just the official action of the committee, not
Right,
the
yeah.
discussion or
Right.
rationale,
Right.
but but that would be embedded certainly in the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got the impression there were no motions made, just discussion and consensus.
Okay.
We have a motion to defer consideration of this item. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Don's motion to defer consideration, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, the motion to defer consideration of item number 2 carries. All right, item number 3, Parmenter Street reconstruction. Amendment 4 to agreement with MSA for revisions to final design 09-117.
Sure, and the short version is, this is what we knew was coming. So when we sat down a while back and talked about final design, it was understood that final design was ongoing and a bit iterative because of the bike ped versus condemnation change that we've been dealing with. So we were trying to get consensus of property owners for the real estate necessary for the design. And through a multi-loop process in design, Krista Sommerfeld is actually with us tonight from MSA, who did the guts of this work. Finally got final design to the degree that there seems to be acceptance of abutting property owners. And so what we knew at discussion at the committee level last time was there would be a need for an additional amendment to account for the extra work that went into that. And that's what this is.
And this has already been reviewed by the city attorney.
It's in our form, but no, it's been reviewed by me.
Okay.
So I don't anticipate any city attorney red flag.
I move that we recommend to the Finance and Personnel Committee and Common Council that this amendment to the agreement with MSA Professional Services in an amount not to exceed $42,240 to account for the scope of changes as described in the amendment with funding from tax implement. In District number 3,
Awesome.
uh,
Oh, you haven't finished.
Oh, yeah.
Never mind.
out, yeah, so, and I move all of that pending final approval of the city attorney. I understand it's a form, but just,
Yeah, so I'll say, subject to approval.
and Don, you,
I still second, yeah.
okay. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed, hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda, Parmenter Street reconstruction final design 09-117. Before we get going on this one, I'd like us to take a 5-minute recess because this might take a minute.
sounds good.
You just stay on.
No,
I'll turn it
so
on.
so I just,
Yeah, everyone, the time, 5 minutes have elapsed. Carrie. Are you, all right,
There she is,
okay,
back in biz.
the time is now 7:11. Members present. Carrie, Kim, Brandon, Dave, Don, and Charles. We have a quorum present. The meeting is back in session. Before we get going on item number 4, the final design process, Sean, Krista, I'd like to thank you both for all of the work that you've put in on this. This project had a lot of moving parts to get to this point, and I understand it was complicated, took a little bit longer than we'd all hoped with a few more complications, but thank you for all of your work.
I'll deflect that to Krista and Kevin and Peter, who have done the lifting on this.
Well, you're welcome. We're not at the finish line yet, but we're getting there.
So, so you've seen, I hope, the plan and profile sheets. We got those stripped out from the overall plan set, which would be just overwhelming, I think, to look at. With the real impression of seeking conditional final approval of the design intent, knowing that there are some details to be worked out yet. But at least we're, I would say, at a solid 90%. And with the intention of getting final design ready for bidding in winter here. And do you know, Krista, offhand, when Peter's going to be able to reach agreements now?
I don't know exactly. I think like November, December has been thrown around for, still kind of the end of the year for getting things wrapped up.
Okay. So I know a lot of the legwork, groundwork is done, but it's just, we didn't pull the trigger on going forward because we didn't know if we had a project. We're pretty confident. Or if there was anything a committee member saw that would warrant a design change, that would be really good to know at this point too.
Yeah. Do we want to potentially connect the bike corridor to Century Place?
That's a fair question, and I think we could do that. I know there's a gate right at the end of Century Place that may be a little bit weird to work around
Yeah,
without car drivers deciding maybe that's a good place for them to cut through.
Could we put could we put a bollard there?
Well, that's always its own question, because I know folks with bike trailers have not really fallen in love with our bollards. In fact, we've taken a few out over the years. Just because of that. But then it does open the door where you can put up a sign that says no motor vehicles. And what does that mean to someone who feels like driving there?
we keep the connection narrow enough, it should still be obvious to cars that if it's not wide enough for their vehicle probably shouldn't be on it.
So we could look into that. Do you know offhand, Krista, because you're up to your eyeballs in this, if there are any red flags such as a retaining wall that we'd have to work around? Oh, muted, sorry.
Yeah, I was just trying to pull up the cross sections to take a look at that because that is not something we really considered. So I don't know off the top of my head, but give me a minute here or so and I can take a look and see.
While Krista's looking into that, are there any other ideas or issues that we should be thinking about?
Looks like the plan view, there's a pedestrian path on the east side,
Correct, that's the multi-use path. Yep.
multi-use path.
West side is sidewalk.
Is that, it looked like early on there was supposed to be a multi-use path on both sides. Is that No, never
No,
was.
no, there really wasn't even from the concept section that we were looking at. It was an idea from the Public Works Committee to look into
Okay.
multi-use paths on both sides. And that's one of the things in this design memo is recommending against that for lack of space. As much as anything, the design is difficult enough with just the sidewalk over there, but trying to widen that suddenly to 10 feet. Starts taking extra real estate, which is what we've been working against at two properties in particular.
So has there been recent lack of real estate acquisition that has caused changes to these?
Yeah, let me just scroll down and highlight probably at least the, oops, sorry, big spot of that. Zoom out a bit. All right. So you saw in the design memo where this is north to the right. And so there's the driveway that splits to Way Forward, which recently acquired what used to be, you know, Knock Reiner's Hotel there, but Way Forward owns that now. And off to the right is REA, Resource Engineering Associates. And it's this that became something of a pinch point. Where does that driveway sit in relation to the right-of-way line? It's the spot where we needed the most acquisition, but we had the least opportunity to make the turns into REA work well. So while this median had originally extended through the middle of the road at 22 feet wide, it is now 0 feet. And that's one of the biggest changes that we made to the cross section, because we just had to make this work for the property owners.
Ron, going to the, I guess the map, show the drawing titled G2, I think.
G2.
G2. It's got Century Place on it.
Drawing a bit of a blank.
Keep going.
G2 would probably be up closer to the beginning of the plan set. You're looking at like an overall, is that what you're asking about?
Oh,
There you go.
Is that G2? Okay, zoom in on the Century Place. Okay, so what you're saying, right, obviously right now, Century Place is a dead end and to nowhere. And on the proposed, that will remain the same. And what Charles is asking, is there a way to have a bike path or something connect through to there? Or to completely open it up?
Well, I'm not asking to completely open it up. That's a,
Okay, that you just want a wide enough
yeah.
path for a bicycle
to get from here, if they're there.
to there, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, part of what I didn't remember is that there's retaining wall there and this isn't at the right level of
I was-
detail for me to.
I was looking
see
at the
that.
Google map.
Yeah, I'm looking at the,
So I know we had some along the cemetery.
Let's see, I mean, I don't.
Yeah, it looks like we're okay at the end there near that station 20+00. It looks like we would be okay. We're matching into the grade relatively close there. So there's not a wall or a big change.
Okay.
There needs to be obviously some connection there, so bicyclists.
And part of what gets goofy is, so there's a driveway connection right here,
Yeah, I see that.
and then a bike path and a roadway.
And it looks like
So
there's a
that's-
sidewalk on the east side, is that right, of Century Place?
I think we do have sidewalk over there, yes, on this, I'll say. I don't know. Yeah,
There's-
this side.
Sidewalk on Century Place. Well, yeah, there's sidewalk in front of the homes.
Exactly.
not at this end of Century. Oh, wait, yeah, there is.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
sidewalk right up to the.
So it starts to get
woman's
into it.
bed.
Part of what caused the request of the city to discontinue that was traffic from Springs Industries using Century Place.
Scroll a little south on that map, just a little bit. And let me see if this lines with what I'm seeing here. So what I don't see on there, the Century Place is, right now there's a sidewalk.
Yeah.
I don't see it on this map.
Well, this isn't showing the sidewalk of Century Place. Just the right of way.
Yeah, so there's a sidewalk that parallels our mentor. You could actually turn in off that sidewalk and have that sidewalk then connect to our bike path.
Okay, so we could probably get a sidewalk in here without cars.
No, I mean, there is a sidewalk right now,
And it ends though, right,
you know.
with the street.
It ends with the
The sidewalk,
driveway.
the sidewalk's interesting. It connects and loops around and back to Century Place. It's an
Oh, I
interesting.
think that's through the cemetery. Is that the road you're looking through? the
Oh, is that
cemetery?
cemetery?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's just a little driveway.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that little driveway,
That just comes back out.
Yeah,
what if you drove into the cemetery as a bicyclist and then had a bike path that connected that driveway? Because I don't think you're burying people along the road, are you? Maybe you are. Yeah.
Yeah, those are lots.
All right,
On
forget
both
it.
sides of the driveway.
All right, take that out of the discussion. Let those people rest.
Well, if you build a ramp. All works out.
All right, we're back down to the end of Century Place.
Yeah, right. And we can look at it. It might get a little bit convoluted as to what's going on, but we could look at maybe connecting that sidewalk out to the bike path. If nothing else, in such a way that ideally, drivers aren't tempted to drive on it or get onto the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, to put a
yeah.
sidewalk size path there. Doesn't look like it would be very long.
Yeah, just give people some very clear and obvious context clues that they can't possibly misinterpret that their car will not go here. I think might be the play if we're making a connection. Which we should be doing for bicycle infrastructure anyway.
What's a bollard?
It's that like, kind of concrete stick.
Oh, the yellow,
The
the
yellow-
OSHA yellow
They should-
post that
they
you
should be
should
yellow,
run
sometimes
into?
they're not, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
If you're lucky, they have like some arrows painted around them that warn you that, oh, hey, there's a separator around here.
OSHA yellow post, gotcha, okay.
put one right in the middle of the wide bike path so that it's sufficiently narrow on either side that a car
Mhm.
cannot transverse.
Yeah, right.
And at that point, if the car decides to use the bike path, literally nothing we could have done because they would have just driven on the grass.
Yeah.
But I think if we can find a way to connect the sidewalk out to the path, that
Yeah.
probably would be okay.
Great.
Yeah, 'cause it would be nice to have them connect.
Yeah, sure.
Well, people. You cannot put it there and then over time see actually where the dirt gets worn.
If people go there, they
The
have a
eroded-
reason to walk there.
The eroded path,
Yes,
that's what that would be called.
Yep.
The
Like-
eroded path.
Goat trail.
goat trail.
Goat trail.
Well, it's Wisconsin, deer trail.
Deer trail.
Is there any thought about the recommendations in the memo from the issues Public Works asked us to look at last time, design issue wise? Let me zoom back out before scrolling.
Yeah.
So we were just discussing the idea of looking at bike paths on both sides, multi-use trails on both sides of the street, and the recommendation is not to do that. For right-of-way interests. There was discussion of considering potential to paint the bike lanes green. That would be costly. It would be annually costly. The recommendation is against that.
The whole bike lane or just the
That was-
crossings?
Well, that was the ask.
Oh,
to paint the bike lanes green or protect them in some way.
It's kind of mirroring what Madison has done in a lot of areas, because they've painted them green. But like you said, in some parts of the world where it's really bikes only, they are green, but if it's pedestrian, they're not green. And so what Madison's done is, yeah, you can walk on it, it's for pedestrian and bike, but we're still gonna paint it green. So Madison's just kind of done their own thing.
well, at crosswalks though, or at street crossings, not like
But-
the entirety of the
I don't know.
bike lane.
I think it's allowed in bike lane extensions through
Okay.
intersections and in bike lanes.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I mean, there's some sections where I've been around Madison and it's pretty long sections of all green.
yeah,
But to say pedestrians aren't allowed there is not the case in Madison.
pedestrians sort of go where they go. So anyway, the recommendation is against putting, green paint on these bike lanes. We were asked to look at a raised crosswalk on Parmenter Street, where the crossing up at Schneider Road is, near where the salt shed is. We're gonna have a crossing there. I would be hesitant to put a raised crosswalk on Parmenter Street, knowing trucks are gonna be bouncing around on it and creating all sorts of noise, but that is one thing we were asked to look at. I think the option to consider might be something like an RRFB there, or in the future, it could be a controlled intersection, but for right now,
Yeah,
it would just be stop controlled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not really in the plans to try to put a raised crosswalk in there. Oh, and then we were asked to look at some sort of low maintenance grass, and MSA has been working with Kylie Shearer, our Parks and Rec director, on what her preferences are for that kind of thing up in the median. I think she has as much interest as anybody in limiting the amount of staff time spent out in a median. I think in terrace areas, she's just recommending turf grass like anywhere else.
Yeah, we could take the no or low mode. Seed mix here. I think it's a good place to try it, and then if we like it, there are plenty of other medians in the city that we might also, over time, as we're redoing roads,
Retrofit them.
we might consider this as a cost saving measure citywide if it works out well here.
Is that the same kind of seed mix that they have in the median on High Point Road right before you get to Greenway? There's like
I
that
think
big
that's a
strip of wildflower.
prairie sort of
Okay,
thing that was put in there, but it doesn't seem to get maintained a lot either.
well, doesn't
So
really need
yeah,
it, it's pretty.
it's kind of flowers, weeds, grasses now. Yeah.
Prairies take a lot more maintenance than people think.
Yeah.
So the no mix is also a no maintenance, no burning, no, none of that kind of.
Yeah, not a burn. I understand it or envision it as a very infrequent mowing kind of thing. So that's where I defer to Kylie. She knows such things. And then this is just acknowledgement. The design's been revised over time, so we're gonna have to cut a little bit out of profile here and there, which reduces our cover on water main a bit, but not to the degree that it should be dangerous or risky. So we're looking at placing some insulation over areas where we have to cut some cover off the water main, but it shouldn't be to the degree that we risk freezing it, which has been one of our trade-offs on design overall too, because in a perfect world, it would be nice to lower some areas, but rebuilding water main, it gets pricey too. Trying to avoid that. And then it would be helpful too if the committee would specifically authorize a wider than typical driveway.
What wider are we?
Do you know, Krista, how wide that is?
How wide the current one is, you're asking?
No, how wide the proposed one is?
Oh, like the drawings that we included show it at 30 feet wide,
Oh,
but the
Oh.
existing is wider.
and they've,
And that's specifically that shared driveway at REA and Way Forward.
okay, and they've expressed an interest in having it wider or remain wider?
Yeah, Bob had some questions about either sliding it one way or another and or making it wider. That is where their garbage truck kind of comes in and backs up. And so just the angle that that truck's turning in there does take up a wider space. You know, as it is now, it is wider. So I'm thinking just to accommodate that still, that driveway would need to be wider than the 30-foot standard.
Do you know, would it need to be 35 or 40?
Yeah, let me just look and see what that existing is. I think it can go a little bit narrower than the existing, but let me just check real quick.
It seems always the thing. I mean, even the one down at PDQ, we built really wide and then people drive off the edge. It almost seems no matter how wide it is, people will find a way.
Right, right. So it looks like the existing driveway at the right of way is about 42 feet.
If they already have that, I don't really see an issue in letting them continue to have that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, or less if possible, if
Yeah,
possible.
if
And
possible.
That's a negotiation.
Yeah,
So, yeah, if you think you can reasonably put some turning templates on there and support a number.
Sure.
Does the committee want to approve up to 42 feet or?
yeah,
Yeah.
let's do the existing.
But to the existing one. It's fine.
Okay,
I'm comfortable with that.
so I'll say as an exception to our. Anything else? So I've jotted down those couple of notes. One is for the driveway exception and one is to connect a sidewalk out to the multi-use path. Or did you have, Krista, any questions you would like the committee to weigh in on or provide guidance for beyond this?
No, I think everything's addressed in the memo that I had on my list.
Okay. Anything else from the committee then? Was the recommendation would be for conditional final design approval of the drawings from 820 with incorporation of these two design changes yet.
I'll make that recommendation.
I'll
second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charles.
No, you beat me to the punch by about a second, so.
There's gonna be a thumb
It's-
wrestle off.
Oh, God. He's a lot younger. I don't.
Well, Loser has to cut his hair. I just have to say that. Laura will second that.
I was gonna just, look, I don't think you can be calling that out.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none opposed, motion carries unanimously. On to, and thank you, Krista, for joining us and for all of your work and perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
The last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
See the parliamentary.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Okay, item number 5, liaison briefings. Brendan, Conservancy Lands, anything?
We didn't have a meeting since our last meeting.
Okay, Carrie, anything from Penn Bike Transit?
No, we didn't have a meeting since the last time we met.
Okay. Don,
We had just all exciting meeting. Key things that were discussed is one, the muddy looking water that was coming out of the rock bed at Red Tail. And it was finally determined that, hey, you know, we have the county inspecting their erosion control and everything else. And when it rains heavily, it's a construction site. Not gonna happen. Ultimately, when that road is rebuilt and we just like said, that's not gonna be for a couple, 3 years, there will be a storm sewer. Should pick it up. Hopefully when there's grass, they won't have this problem. And they're redoing some of the ponds now to try and control that. That flow. And the county inspects it, so.
yeah,
They're the ones in charge. There's always talk about referendum. There will be a public hearing, I think October 2nd on that. And that'll be on the agenda next month to discuss items and how we're going to present that. It's pretty much of anything important. I mean, there was one, the Greenway development that's going in, wanted approval of fee in lieu of a stormwater detention pond. Because they're building lot line to lot line. And that got tabled because they had miscalculated the fee. They're doing green roofs and all those types of things interacted with it. And we still want somewhere along the line to discuss that fee in lieu of, because we think the developers in some cases take advantage of it. And it's not to the betterment of the city. So we're looking into that.
thank you, Don. Next item on the agenda, future meeting agenda items, no discussion or action. Carrie, do you have any? Kim,
No,
Brandon, no. Dave, Don,
You know,
I have none. We have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
thanks, Gary.
Good to see you.
Have a good Labor Day.